Congressman Mike Quigley. Congressman, I know you served 8 years on the House Intelligence Committee. Your thoughts on how all of this went down, and I guess this move taken by China to send a spy balloon over the United States. It's a pretty brazen move.
You know, it is. And let me just add, so much has been said about this. To a large extent, it just doesn't make sense at this time. Clearly, both nations are attempting to normalize relations, with the president's meeting, now Secretary Blinken meeting with his counterpart. It is conceivable that somehow the Chinese president wasn't aware of at least the timing of this. It doesn't minimize its severity and the brazen attempts to surveil our country, putting in perspective the fact that there are low Earth Chinese satellites surveilling all of these areas almost on an hourly basis. So all that's extraordinarily serious, has to be mitigated against. It's why a healthy intelligence community is so important. But just so much of this doesn't make sense to happen at this particular time.
How important do you think it is to get this equipment out of the water and analyze it? We're told when they do recover this balloon and whatever surviving equipment remains, that it's going to be taken up to Quantico and examined.
Yeah, I agree with my colleague, the ranking member now, Mr. Himes. It's better to recover this and analyze it, see what we might learn about what the capabilities there are and how the Chinese are attempting to do this, rather than have spread over a long debris field. So it made sense to not shoot this down until it was over passed over the United States territory.
And it sounds as though the Pentagon was taking this very seriously. They didn't see this as being accidental at all. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the balloon was being used to surveil strategic sites in the United States, in the continental United States. How concerning is that?
Oh, it's very concerning. All I'm saying is I think it's just as concerning that the satellites are up there. I think the only thing that might have been accidental is the president of China may not have known of the timing. No, there's deliberate spying taking place by the Chinese government. In January, a grad student was sentenced to jail for 6 years in Chicago for spying on our scientists, our academics. This is a very intense effort by the Chinese to spy on our government and our private sector, our military. This is important. All I'm saying is it just doesn't make sense that it's happening at this particular time with this brazen an effort when they're trying to normalize relations. And the concern would be that it is important for us to normalize these relations, and this is going to send us in the exact opposite direction. It doesn't benefit either country, and it's a horrible mistake by the Chinese at this time.
Have you ever heard of anything like this happening before, all your years on the Intelligence Committee? The Chinese sending a spy balloon over the U.S.?
Well, the Chinese have sent balloons over the U.S. properties. It has happened before. So, we're aware of this. But doing it over, directly the middle of the continental United States, we're trying to understand this because what most spying will tend to be an attempt at covert in nature. This is something in which I think every American is aware of. It is not particularly effective. So, look, we're concerned about this. We're concerned about these surveillance efforts. All I'm adding, I think, to the equation is the fact that I think the Chinese made a historically difficult and silly mistake at an extremely bad time. So we have to mitigate against all the efforts the Chinese government is making to surveil our government. And it is obviously human intelligence, signal intelligence. This is just one that every American has been made aware of.
And what about these criticisms from Republican lawmakers who were saying that this balloon should have been shot down sooner than this, over Montana, in a sparsely populated area, something along those lines? Do you agree that it was a good decision to allow this balloon to continue to float over the U.S. until it could be shot down off the coast?
Sure, because look, this is flying at least twice the height of normal commercial aircraft. and sometimes 3 to 4 times that. So who's going to do the calculus of when you actually shoot this down, how far it's going to travel before it lands somewhere? And it is very likely that there's a lot of very heavy equipment in this. So I think what you do in the proper course of action was to mitigate against the surveillance that was taking place. The Department of Defense talked about doing that, and they're quite capable of doing that. They've got a lot of experience. And once it gets into an area where it doesn't endanger Americans, you shoot it down, collect it, and learn what you possibly can.
And when we were talking in the previous hour with Congressman Adam Smith about all of this, he said that it was a mistake for Secretary of State Blinken to have canceled his trip, and that Blinken should be going over and confronting the Chinese about this. What do you think of that? Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. I think that you engage on an ongoing basis. There's always room for diplomacy. And I just remind everyone, the opposite of diplomacy is something you don't want. We're seemingly in a sort of a Cold War with the Chinese right now. And there's a lot to be worried about with their military aggression, surveillance like this, everything from TikTok to the, the human rights violations we're all aware of. But we need to address these issues, reminding ourselves that these two governments' economies are incredibly intertwined. The impact on one affects the others. So there's always room for diplomacy. I understand the pressure they might have felt to postpone this trip, but I agree with my colleague, Mr. Smith, that those discussions should continue as terse as they might be, and that ongoing diplomatic efforts with our allies to pressure China to act more appropriately are more effective when we're in China as well.
All right. Congressman Mike Quigley, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.